I thought you might like a little video of me doing a bit of work on my latest elephant drawing. I will not spend too long and take up too much of your time. I'll just give you a little idea of what I'm working on, how it's going, and you can see, give you some idea of the scale of this drawing, and I'll try and produce little video clips of the different elements of the drawing as I go through it, and then hopefully give you an idea of how the drawing came together. Okay, so I'll just adjust the camera a little bit so you can get a close-up of what I'm doing, and I'll talk you through it. Okay, just bear with me a minute. Okay, I'm back. Right, so I'm just going to do some work on the mouth and this lower jaw area. This is an elephant which is in the background. This is an adult elephant, and he or she is just behind the two juvenile elephants which are in the front. So this is really background. I'm trying to frame these two juvenile elephants with the trunks. There's going to be another trunk over the other side from another elephant. So this really is background, but obviously it needs to be, I think, relatively detailed because of the type of shot it is. It's not way in the background, and it needs to also, so it needs to have a reasonable amount of detail, but it needs to not detract from the foreground, which is the two young juvenile elephants. So far this has taken me, I would guess, about 3 or 4 days to get this far. So I've drawn it all out, as you can see, painstakingly drawn out these wrinkles. They don't have to be exactly right, but they do need to be in the right sort of place, particularly on things like trunks and areas like this around the face of the elephant, because obviously the creases do give form to what's going on. This is the mouth just here, this is one of the tusks. So you don't want to get hung up on the creases, making sure that you exactly follow what's going on in the photograph, the reference photograph, but you do want to really make sure that they follow the right lines, and so the form stays right. So once I've drawn it all in, I'll go over it with a 2H pencil, which is what I always do, and I'll put a base tone in. I usually go over that with a blender and just flatten that tone out a little bit, as you can see here. Then I'll start to go back into the wrinkles with a slightly softer pencil. Then I'll slowly build up through the pencils. So these wrinkles originally were drawn in with a 2H pencil. Then I put a tone over with a 2H pencil. I then went in with a H pencil and gave them a little bit more depth and detail. I'll then go in with a blender and blend that out a little bit again so it softens it all. I'll then go in with a B pencil, or even back in with a H pencil, put a bit more detail in, back in with a blender, and move up to a B pencil, and carry on in that vein. This needs a bit more work here than it needs to be at the moment. I've gone into this with a B pencil in areas. I'm just working on this. I'm starting with the 2B pencil. I want to get some, obviously want to get this quite dark, bit of 2B pencil here, and that'll work all the way through, and I'll go backwards and forwards playing with the tones to get it right. When I've got it mostly right, obviously I'll move down through the drawing, but I won't actually finish this until I've got the young elephants in, and then I'll decide how that needs to be set, because this is going to be a background and I don't want it jumping forward too much. So like I said, at the moment I'm just concentrating on this area here, just trying to get it some detail into this mouth area and the creases around it. When you're doing dark areas like this, although it might look on the photograph as though it's just a black mass, really sometimes it might pay to change the exposure on the photograph so you can see what's going on in there, because you never really just want a too dark an area. It's just quite boring, and you always, you know, particularly when you're drawing something on this scale, you know, where people can see it, they don't just want this to be a black area, nothing going on. So try and understand what's going on in there and try and put some detail into what you're doing. When I say detail, not fantastic detail, because it's going to be background, but it has to be interesting. So I'm doing at the moment, I'm just trying to get a bit of depth into some of these creases. So like I said, I've gone in with I've started with a 2H pencil, and then a H, and then a B, and then I'm just slowly building it up. I'm trying to get a feel for, obviously, the depth of these creases are going to get slightly wider as they get deeper. I don't want to, but I don't want to jump in straight away and make them too dark, because again, a crease isn't just, it's not one solid black area. There's a lot of different depths in there, so obviously the way you're going to show that there are different depths in there is by having a variation of tones in the pencil. So that way, if you start the creases with a harder pencil like a 2H, then go in with your H, and then your B, and then your 2B, and you're not going over exactly what you do with the 2H pencil. You're not going over that with your softer pencils. What you're doing is you're just putting some lesser lines on top, and then you're giving it a detail, you're giving it a depth, you're giving it some interest. Now what I'm doing here, to be perfectly honest, I'm paying not much attention to the photograph. I'm just putting in a little bit of because there's a lot of creases in here in the skin, and to be perfectly honest, I can't see all these in the photograph, so I'm sort of winging it a little bit. But nobody's ever going to see the reference photograph when this is done, so there's only me that's going to know. And as long as it looks like an adult elephant's jaw at the end of the day to you, or to whoever else is viewing it, that's all that matters. And I always say to people, don't worry too much about your reference photograph. The reason it's called a reference photograph, it's a reference, and at the end of the day, nobody's ever going to, I don't think you should ever really put your reference photograph next to, alongside what you've drawn or painted, and say, do you think I've done a good job of replicating that? Because that's not really the aim of the game. The aim of the game is to turn out something that is an interesting piece of art, not to try and show somebody how well you've managed to copy the reference piece that you're working on from. So I'm just going to go with the blender here. I'm just softening up a little bit around what I've just done. Not that you think I've done that much. So all the time, what you're doing as you're putting more depth into the creases, more darkness into the creases, you're also altering the skin around it, the tones in the skin around it, because obviously as these get darker, some of the surrounding area is going to get darker. So it's a matter of balance. And it is a case of scooting around a little bit at this point to see which areas need a bit more, which need to go a little bit darker. You can start off with them mostly with a lot more uniform, and then as you work through, you'll see which areas of the creases need to be a little bit more distinctive, have a little bit more depth to them. It's going to be quite a long way to go on this. I won't bore you by just making you sit here and watch me play with these creases for too long. what I will do, I thought I'd give you an idea, show you what I'm doing, give you an idea of the drawing I'm working on. I'll try and do regular updates, shoot little films of where I am so far on the drawing. Then you can come back and you can see maybe tomorrow or the day after, depending on whether I've progressed enough. I can show you where we are with this, and hopefully we'll moved on to a different area, and hopefully give you an idea of how I'll build up a drawing like this, a big drawing, so that when I eventually show you the finished piece, you'll have some idea of how I did it, and hopefully maybe gained a little bit of knowledge for yourself in the process. Right, I'm going to turn off the camera now. I'm sure I've bored you enough with this, and hopefully I'll be back with a bit more film tomorrow or the day after. I hope that's been slightly educational and a bit enjoyable, and I'll see you tomorrow. Hello, I'm back again. Right, so the drawing has progressed a little bit more, quite a bit more I think, than the last time I talked to you. So what I'm going to do is I haven't put anything in between where we're at and where we are now. It was a bit repetitive on what I'd already showed you. What I'm going to sort of talk you through now is just what I'm doing at the moment, and I'll give you a close-up. The image isn't great, so it tends to simplify what I've got on the paper a little bit more, so you'll have to bear with me on that. And I'll just try and talk you through how I'll put this sort of detail in. Okay, so if you bear with me, I'm just going to zoom the camera and I'll be back to you. Okay, I'll just talk you through the drawing so far. So when I spoke to you earlier, we were working on the elephant in the background. You can see that's more or less not finished, but mostly finished now. I think we've got that far. I'll put some more detail into the trunk, so I've detailed the trunk, as you can see down here. Like I said, the trunk is going to frame on the left hand side. This trunk will frame the two young elephants, and over on the other side there'll be a similar sort of trunk going on. So I'll put the back of the young elephant here, the elephant's here, and I'm starting to work on his face. The back of the elephant here isn't finished yet. I've got a reasonable amount of tone into it, same with the ear, and then I'll go backwards and forwards for those in order to throw the ear forward. Obviously I'll put a bit more depth of tone into that, into the rear of the elephant, the young elephant, and obviously I might do some work up here on the elephant in the background, again to set that back and throw the young elephant forward. But again, that's a balance, and as the young elephant gets drawn in, I'll do some work on the elephant at the back. So that's where we are at the moment. I haven't actually drawn in the elephant to the right yet. We will get there. You can see all this detail was drawn in to start with a 2H pencil, which is I tend to always do that, and then the basic tone was also put in the 2H pencil. I'll then start to go back over it then with probably a H pencil just to get some of the lines in, and then I'll start putting the tones on and then slowly darkening to create the wrinkles in the elephant. I'm just going to put the camera down and just go in front of it and just talk you through a little bit about what I'm doing with the head. Okay, so at the moment I'm working on the head. I'm working around his cheek here and his eye, working down towards his mouth and his trunk. Like I said, I've tried to get some tone into the ear and into the rear of the elephant. I'm playing around with the tones a little bit, so I'm making the tones slightly darker on here to give it a little more punch than I can see in the reference photo. I've always said a reference photo is just that, a reference, so you don't need to stick rigidly to it. And also photos sometimes lack a little bit of depth, so sometimes you can increase that depth by working the tones a little bit more with a little bit more contrast maybe than you see on your reference photo. So as you can see, I've put all this in with a 2H just so that I've got something to work on. A bit painstaking, I know, but there's no way around it. I then will go over with a H pencil once I've got it in with a 2H. I suppose you could go in straight with the 2H, but I like to give myself some leeway. And also I think as you keep going over these wrinkles, you're not drawing over exactly the same place, and it starts to give the wrinkle a little bit more depth. Once I've done that, I will, as you can see here, start to put a darker tone in and try and vary the tone a little bit. I will then I'll go in with the B pencil, then start to pick out some of these darker areas, try and define some of these areas as the creases get deeper. I'll put his eye in with a little bit more, I made his eye dark with a little more depth of tone. That will really be quite black at the end of it, but I don't want this to be a solid black, so his eye will be black, but it'll have some variations in it. Same with all of this. So at the moment I've darkened all these creases, and then I'm trying to get a nice dark tone on, and then once I've got the tone on, some of these creases will go darker again. You know, what looks here, you can see these creases here look quite dark, but they're probably no darker than these are here. And you can, but obviously as soon as you put a darker tone on, they all sink back. So it's a bit of a case of keep sort of working into the wrinkles, the creases in the skin, getting the tone on, and then having a look what that does to the wrinkle and then, or the crease in the skin, and then going in and reworking it. Like I said, it's a bit of a, seems a bit painstaking, but it's just the way I work and the way I find hopefully that I get a nice little bit of depth. Obviously there'll be some work with the eraser as well later on to just pick up some of the highlights in his skin, because obviously as the light catches it, you will get, and you get these folds, you will get like deeper areas here where you get the deep crease, where you get the darker area. You might get the light catching the top of this skin here, so that'll be a lighter area. This here is really quite a dark area here, which is the shadow. You've got the body of this young elephant here, and you've got the trunk of this other young elephant here. This is his body in a lot of shadow. On the photograph there's not really much detail there, so what I will do, I will try and invent a little bit of not detail, but I'll try and obviously show that there's something going on in there, that is, and it won't just be a black area. At the moment I've just got some tone in just to let me know that it's a dark area, and sit it back and just give me some idea what's going on. So I'm just going to continue working through here at the moment, and I go probably through his head, up his trunk, and then I might, when I get down here, I might put some of this, get a bit more tone into this, just so that I can see what it's doing with this, how it's throwing this forward. So I'll probably get this elephant finished through to up his trunk, and then I'll probably work on the body down here before I move on onto this young elephant here. When I've done all that, I'll go back over to the body of this elephant, put a little bit more detail in here, and also adjust the tones a lot more. Particularly when I've got this in, when I can see what the relationship between this is and the ear and the body over here. And obviously I need to get this elephant in, this young elephant in, before I see what I'm exactly doing with this, because again we want these to be the focus of the image, but we don't want them to get confused. so I want these to stand out a little bit from this. And obviously, like I said, there's another elephant going to be on the right hand side. I know I'm probably sound like I'm rambling a little bit. I'm maybe repeating myself, I'm sorry if I am. But I think it's just to emphasise that you don't need to rush a drawing like this. I think you have to be prepared to keep coming back to it, and every time you come back to it you'll have a fresh eye. So tomorrow I'll come back and I'll probably think, oh, I don't like what I've done there, that needs to be a little bit darker, that needs to be a little bit lighter. And also I've got another drawing, or a couple of drawings on the go, and I will go and do some work on them just to give me a bit of a break from this one. Not that it should be arduous and you need a break, I just think it just keeps you fresh. So I'm not really, I thought I'd talk to you today about what I was doing rather than draw, because this is quite a painstaking. You're just going to watch me doing the same thing over and over again. I don't think it's going to be very instructional. Well, I hope that, I'm going to finish there. I hope that is of a little bit of benefit, and when I've got some more, when I've got this in, I'll come back again and we can talk about that, and you can have a look. Hopefully this gives you a bit more of an insight into the drawing rather than me just taking progress shots, which I'm doing anyway and posting, but hopefully this is a little bit more informative. Okay, so I hope that was of interest. It's a little bit shorter than the last one, which you probably think is a good thing, and I'll, like I said, shoot a bit more in a few days when I've moved it on. Okay, thanks a lot. Hello, welcome to the third instalment of my little demonstration on how I'm putting together this drawing. I think it's moved on a little bit more from when I talked to you last. You can see now we've got quite a bit of detail in the face of this young elephant here. Got the flank of this elephant in the background has now been put in with a reasonable amount of detail. I've drawn in the elephant that's going to be over on the right hand side, which I must admit is slightly different to my original thoughts. The reason I'd left this blank is I wasn't entirely sure. I had a couple of ideas on what I wanted to do here, and I played with a couple of the ideas, and this is what I'm going with. So the picture's going to finish about here, drawing finish here, and I've just got this mature elephant, youngish mature elephant, which is coming in from the right hand side, and I'm hoping that it sort of complements what's going on here. Still keep this as a focus, but I'm hoping that it draws the eye into this area here. That's my hope with it, and the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. So what I thought I'd do today, I'll move the camera, obviously zoom in onto this bit, and I'll just talk about just drawing in some of the elephant hide here in the background, just to give you an idea of how I draw, how I will approach this area of elephant skin hide. So if you'll bear with me while I just adjust the camera, and I'll be back and I'll just talk about that. Okay, so we're just going to work on this little area here. We're just going to bring it in line with what we're doing here. We're going to keep it quite dark because obviously we want to set it back behind the trunk of the young elephant in the front. Obviously you can see the first thing you can remember when you saw I'd drawn it out. First thing I usually do is draw it out with a 2H pencil and draw all the wrinkles into the hide. Then I'll go over it with I always put a base tone on just to set it back and give me something to work on. And then what I've done, so I've put a base tone on here. You can see I've put a little bit of extra tone around the shadow just to stand the trunk forward a bit. This is all going to change. That's just to give me an idea of what I'm working on. And of course, as soon as you put I've gone over the wrinkles at this moment in time with the B pencil, and obviously just to stand them forward a little bit as I put the base tone on. But what I'm going to do now, this is going to get darker, so I'm going to go back into the wrinkles and just darken them up a little bit again. We don't need to be too concerned about accuracy, if you like, but obviously we need to make sure everything sort of follows through with what's going on. You can see they've got this wrinkle that comes down here, which is going to sort of peter out down here. This one comes up here somewhere. So first thing I want to do, I've got a 5B pencil. I don't usually use, quite often I don't use a pencil this soft, but when I'm doing this sort of thing I will. So first thing I want to do is get some of these wrinkles that I put in, some of these darker areas in with a little bit more depth. I'm not being too concerned about accuracy, if you like, but you remember, trying to remember what you're doing. These are wrinkles in a leather hide, and so they're not. These are deep creases, so they're not going to be that. They're going to have a uniform pattern to them, but the actual crease themselves, they're not going to be a solid line. They're not going to be anything too sort of straight and correct. So I'm just going to put this in. I'm going to choose. I'm not paying a great deal of attention at the moment to the reference photo. I've already got my lines in. I'm just going to put them in a little bit darker. I know that in this area they're quite deep, so I can afford to go in quite heavily with this. And because they're quite deep, obviously they're going to be quite dark, but also they're not going to be, you're not doing a solid line all the way through this. I think what you're trying to do, you're trying to give the impression that this is quite a rough hide. So I'm breaking this up a little bit, trying to give the impression that it's a rough hide, so we're not going to be too. So what we don't really want is straight lines, nice sharp edges. Like I said, all this is quite dark. Some of these aren't quite so dark, so I'm just going to put some thinner lines in here. And as we start to put more tone on, because it's going to be quite a dark area, these would start to disappear anyway. So as you can see, I'm just pretty much going over what I've done with a H pencil and a B pencil. So I've got some, I've darkened that up a little bit. Now the first thing I want to do, actually what I am going to do, like I said, we've got this deep crease in the hide coming down here. Like I said, that runs down here, so I am going to really hit that one a little bit harder because that's a deep crease. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've got a B pencil here. I'm going to start hatching in. Just to get this some depth into here. So I'm not too worried at the moment about the contrasts in the tone. I'm just trying to get the entire area set back a little bit, try and make sure that we're getting a similar sort of consistency of tone to what we've got going on up there. So when you're putting in a tone like this, try and be controlled And what you're doing with the pencil, we're not scribbling it in, we are drawing it in. So we're trying to make sure that our lines are controlled. You know, we're not sort of just scribbling, we're trying to make sure our pencil's travelling in a straight line. That way we're not getting little arcs that when they join up give us a strange dark area where we don't want one. We're not putting a lot of pressure on here, we're just allowing that tone to just grow. Okay, like I said, this is not a really detailed area, so the next thing I'm going to do, because I want to set these creases back a little bit, still with this pencil, I'm going to just add a little bit more tone just over the crease that we've put in, just to darken the area around it, just so that these creases start to feel like they're sitting in a deep part of the hide. Okay, so I'm just concentrating on what this does start to do then is you'll notice with elephant hide these form little ridges as they go into the deeper areas, and obviously as the light catches it, it tends to catch the centre of the raised part of the hide obviously more than it does the deeper parts, so that's where you're going to get the lighter area generally. So what we can do now, excuse me a minute, you can take a putty rubber and just create a few little highlights in there. Nothing, it's quite a dark area, so we're just looking for a bit of variation here. I'm just darkening that across there because this is sort of the back ear of this young elephant here. You can see the top of his ear here, and obviously what we're going to want to do is stand that forward, so I'm just making that area probably a little bit darker than it would be, because I want it to stand forward the same here. So if this wasn't in the shade, so much of a shadow, if it wasn't so dark here, you could use the same technique, but obviously it would be lighter, sort of what you've got here. So you've got the same technique here, and you've got slightly, obviously not so much of a darker line into the crease. The reason for that is I don't really want this to be too bold and take away from this. You can see I've done the same thing here where I've worked around to give this the crease a bit of depth around it. This a lighter middle. Like I said, it's not rocket science, and to a certain extent it's a bit of a repeating pattern. So we've gone around here, we've darkened around these areas, and I want to take some of the because this is going to sit back, I just want that to be slightly muffled, so I'll get a blender, and what I tend to do with the blender, so just go over. What this does, it softens all those creases that we just put in, so it actually sends them back a little bit more, and it also enables you to create this softer feel on the hide. I'll just show you up here. See, with this you can really do quite a bit. See how that work? You can work the hide quite nicely. See, if this was a lighter piece, see how what you can start to do just with a simple blender. I'm just playing with this here. So I'll get the blender and what I'm just trying to do is take a bit of the detail out of that, because I don't really want detail in there. I just want it to sit back. Now I'm going back in because obviously I've lost a lot of, we've softened that. I'm just going to go back in and put a couple of these darker areas in here so that we feel that, so that crease is running down here. This is a slightly deeper crease here, so just put a bit into there. Now obviously this is just a quick view of this area, and what I'm doing is we need to do a little bit more work, and there will be some more work on that. I just wanted to give you an idea of how I create a bit of elephant hide, and to a certain extent I think it's just a case of playing a little bit and having a bit of fun. Right, I'm probably sat too close to it, I don't know what that looks like. You've got a better view of it than I have. I'm going to stand back now and have a look, and if it does look awful then obviously you won't get to see this video. Right, I hope that was a little bit of interest. I know I haven't covered a lot there, but I hope it may be, like I said, a bit of interest to you. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll get back to you probably when we've got this elephant in and maybe this trunk in and it's all starting to come together. Thank you. Bye. Progress so far then on my elephants drawing. I can't remember quite where we were at the last episode. You can see now I've got quite a lot of this detail in. This elephant on the end is coming along quite nicely. I'm starting to get the young elephant in at the bottom. I'm sort of working down this way because that way I'm not getting my hand too much onto the on the graphite and smudging it and getting my hand dirty. What I'm going to do talking today is just a little bit of work on this leg here. I know sort of we've already talked about this type of thing, but it's fairly repetitive right across this drawing, so if you don't mind, I'll just work on a bit of this leg and show you what I'm trying to do here, and I hope that might be of interest. Okay, so I'll just alter the camera and we'll have a look at that. Okay, be back in a minute. Progress so far then on my elephants drawing. I can't remember quite where we were at the last episode. You can see now I've got quite a lot of this detail in. This elephant on the end is coming along quite nicely. I'm starting to get the young elephant in at the bottom. I'm sort of working down this way because that way I'm not getting my hand too much onto the on the graphite and smudging it and getting my hand dirty. What I'm going to do talking today is just a little bit of work on this leg here. I know sort of we've already talked about this type of thing, but it's fairly repetitive right across this drawing, so if you don't mind, I'll just work on a bit of this leg and show you what I'm trying to do here, and I hope that might be of interest. Okay, so I'll just alter the camera and we'll have a look at that. Okay then. So I'm still here with my usual array of pencils, 2H to B, and also where I've got sort of sharper pencils and blunter pencils. Got a couple of blenders, an eraser and a putty eraser, which we'll need for this, going to create some light just down here. So the first thing I've done is I've drawn in all of these wrinkles on the elephant's leg, and I've referred to the drawing, and I've obviously tried to have a look what is going on and try to replicate the direction, but to be perfectly honest, it sends you loopy if you try and get everything exact. So generally I try and get some detail into it to make sure that the basics are in the right place, but then it's just a case of just trying to sort of create the illusion of the elephant hide. So I put this in, most of this I put in with a 2H or a H pencil. And what I've started to do now, you can see I've just started to hatch. As you know, I like to do over this area. Like I said, the hatching always needs to be controlled and take your time with it. You know, sometimes you can think that this is just filling in so you can scribble away at it a little bit, but this is as important as any other part of your drawing. Every aspect of the drawing really you need to consider and apply the same sort of care, regardless of whether you're putting in the detail in an eye or whether you're just doing something like this, because you'll regret it later if you don't, and you'd be surprised how variations in the drawing will show up in the finished drawing. So if you sort of think, oh, that area is not of such great importance, so we can get that in a bit quick. Well, you might do, but what you'll find is that when you look at the drawing will look out of balance. You'll see that some areas look as though you've spent time on them and got the detail in there, and then other areas will look like you've actually lost your patience, and just rushed it. So I'm not saying that you have to have the same detail in every aspect of the drawing, but even the areas of the drawing where you haven't got the detail, you still need to make sure that the drawing is of the same consistency as the rest of the piece. So you might be putting some background in, and like I said, you might not have as much detail, but you want to make sure that that element at the back without the detail is still drawn with the same level of concentration. So just because it's less detailed doesn't mean it's not as well drawn. So I'm just quickly, well not quickly, obviously don't rush it, but I'm just going over here, getting this filled in. Now what you're looking to do, what I always look to do to start with, is get a nice even tone. This is going to form a base layer, and it also lets me have a look at what I've done before. It drops all these pencil lines back and enables me to just get a feel for it. So you can see that's a nice even tone over there. There's no, it's not scribbly. There's no gaps in between it. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hatch it the other way, because I always like to do this. Piece of paper, so that I'm not going to smudge too much of what I've already done. And I'm just hatching it across at 90 degrees to the hatching that I've just done. And I like to do this just, I think, gives a consistency to the hatching. If you're going to use a blender on top, probably not so important, and I probably will use a blender on top of this, but I think it's good practice, because by hatching it both ways you'll get a nice tone over your hatching. And if you're doing something like an elephant skin, you know, sometimes this will start to give you those nice little indentations you see in the elephant skin as the texture of the paper just gives you that slightly mottled sort of effect. And obviously if you do it both ways you get this effect. If you do it one way, you're going to sort of see all the pencil strokes. So this way you're going to get rid of the pencil strokes as such. like I said, at the moment I'm just putting in sort of a flat tone, so there's no variation in this. I'm not creating any shape really at the moment. It's just looking like a flat area. Like I said, this is like my underpainting, if you like, or if you're painting, I'm just trying to get something down that I can work on top of. Like I said, I've repeated this before. I'm repeating this from what I've said before, but you know, that's because that's the way I work. I'm fairly consistent with the way I do things, and I think it doesn't hurt to reinforce that this is a process that I apply all over the drawing. Okay, so like I said, you want to take your time with this, but that doesn't mean it necessarily has to take you a long time. Obviously I do this a lot, so I'm relatively quick. Now what I'm going to do now, first thing I'm going to do, I just want to, because I want to send this back a little bit, so I've got a blender here, and what I'm doing with the blender obviously is I'm trying to follow the wrinkles that I put in, so that they still stay there, and it also, this starts to give you a bit of a skin texture straight away. So without, you know, we haven't put lots of variation into this, but what we just these simple methods start to pull things into a little bit of shape. So we've got this area here, which is the shadow from his ear, which I already put in. So I'm scooting over this, and this probably seems, sometimes this can seem a little bit sort of how can I put it, you might think, well, why have I drawn all these lines in quite nicely and then I'm smudging them all out again? But unfortunately it's a process that you have to do, because unless the line's there in the first place, you can't smudge them out and make give them a little bit more tonality. And then obviously when we go over the top with a slightly darker pencil, that'll start to create slightly deeper creases into these into this lighter area of the crease. And also, as we're doing this, it's also breaking up the skin texture. You do tend to find that the hide tends to be broken up into these little sort of high and low areas, and usually the sun obviously catches the higher area more, so this naturally, as you draw around the deeper part of the wrinkle with your blender, then this leaves the middle area of the wrinkle lighter, and then that obviously starts to immediately reflect the fact that that was where the sun or the light would catch it, and obviously that would start to give it hopefully a 3D type effect. Right, so I'm going to carry this on all the way down. It's going to get a bit boring for you, so what I am going to do, I'm just going to show you that part of this. So we're going to get a darker area in here where the shadow of this ear is falling, and also you got the leg obviously disappearing around, so this is like the back of the leg, and then we've got a patch of light here, because most of this drawing the light is coming from this sort of direction. You can see by the way the shadows fall in all the areas. You can see that. So there's an area of the elephant's leg here which is catching the sun, and that's going to be quite a light area, or lighter in comparison. So like I said, put all this in as the same tone, this sort of mid-tone. We're going to have a lighter area here. So usually I'll take my putty rubber then. What I can start to do is lift out some of this lighter area. And also, because I've drawn it all in, including the wrinkles, and in this lighter area the wrinkles get less defined, so by picking it out this way I'm actually picking out the wrinkle as well, so that the wrinkles are getting less defined. So I'm killing two birds with one stone, really. This will be, this is just, there's another area here which is just catching the sun a little bit. Obviously this will be refined with some more tonal work with the pencils, but as I said, this is just starting to pick out these lighter areas. It'll be more obvious when I've got all the rest of this in, but like I said, I'm sure you don't want to sit here watching me repeat myself too much, so I'm just going to do this little area here just to give you an idea. And then, like I said, this area here is just bringing it back, and this is going to be starting to get darker. So I'm just going to hatch this again. I've still only got a 2H pencil here. So I want this to be quite subtle. This is going to need to go back a little bit. It's going to need to be a bit darker. The flank of the elephant here, because this is going to have a darker tone, but it still wants to stand forward of this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some tone into here first, and I won't take this back as dark as it's going to go. Like I said, I've still only got a 2H pencil. I'm just going to get some of that tonal area in. At the moment, like I said, it's still a bit of a flat tone because I'm just trying to work my tones around to see where I need to be. I'm just going to get this tonal area in here. Like I said, still a 2H pencil. As you know, what I've said before, I'll work with a pencil on something like this until that pencil stops doing anything with regard to, it stops laying down any more graphite, and then I'll go to a slightly softer pencil. That way I think you get a nice tonal range. You probably get the most you can out of your pencils. So obviously that's starting to get a bit darker there. So I'm just going to do now is I'm just got a H pencil. These are the blunter pencils as well. So and with a H pencil, I'm just going to set this back a little bit farther. There are a few highlights in here that will need picking back up again, but we'll just go and grab them with the eraser. So what I'm trying to do here, just bring this leg forward a little bit. It's quite a subtle process. Send that back a little bit so that I can get a feel for how that's looking. So I've got the H pencil here, only because I've already taken this back probably as far as I can with a 2H. So I'm just getting this H pencil on and just putting a bit of tone into here. As you can see, we've got some light, there is some light catching this as well. The light's broken up. so I'm just picking up, so I've kept the H pencil here. I'm just putting some of those wrinkles back in a little bit. Just try and get a feel for what's going on. The fact that you've already got sort of a basic wrinkle there now, which is sort of blended out, means you can just work on top of those and just play. So now it's just going to be a case of working this up. Let's go slightly darker here. So I'm going to carry on with this, and next time I come back to you, we can have a look at this and see how it's changed from what you've got here, and hopefully you can see how what I've done, what effect it's had. So I'll be carrying on using exactly the same techniques I've just showed you, and probably by the time we come back next time, hopefully the drawing will be starting to near some sort of completion, and I'll talk you through it. Anyway, I hope that was of interest again, and I'll speak to you soon. So this is the finished drawing. I've lived with it for a little while, and I'm happy that it's complete. As we scan through it, hopefully you can see how all the effects and all the techniques we talked about work with the final drawing, and I'm really quite pleased with it. And what we've got here next is, this is actually the final drawing in all of its glory, if you like. And like I said, I'm really pleased with it. Loved how it's come out, and I hope you've enjoyed the video and maybe learnt a little bit along the way. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.